Greetings and once again, welcome back to our mini podcast, Every Touchpoint Matters, where we discuss with seasoned business leaders how the quality of every touchpoint, whether internal or external, impacts our ability to lead, our professional reputations, and how we're perceived in business. And today I welcome a very dear friend and business colleague, Pat Brady. Pat is one, let me tell you, interesting cat. We're going to have some fun. He's a veteran of Illinois in national politics. He's worked in the Illinois State's Attorney's Office and for the U.S. Department of Justice. Has history working in professional services with Deloitte as well. Pat is currently the co-founder of BE Media, which provides high-level all-media communications consulting to a variety of public and private clients. Patrick?
David, good to see you again, buddy.
Thank you for joining me, my friend.
It's a pleasure. This is quite a facility.
You're a veteran of this stuff. So, I'm the rookie compared to what you've been doing.
You get two Irish guys a microphone and it's all good.
Amen. Well, listen, as I said, I think we're going to have some fun. The anchor tenet of this program is all about a lot of what I try to teach. Every interaction matters, every touch point matters. And so I'd like us to kind of reflect on that relative to your journey, your career, the kinds of things you're doing, how it applies in politics and those sorts of things. But, maybe just to get started, what does the concept mean to you? Every touch point matters. Where does it land for you?
Well, when I grew up downstate, as you know, down in Bloomington. When I moved up here after law school to start in the state's attorney's office, my dad, who was a State Farm agent, so was a sales guy, said, you need to go to everything you can go to, every fundraiser, every event, every whatever, and start meeting people. And those touch points to me, now that all those people, the hundreds of people, including you, I met back then, are now business allies in some way, shape, or form, or political allies, or friends, and that's touch points to me. That's what it's all about. I teach that to my kids.
Yeah. Keep going on that. There's different qualities, in my opinion, on these touch points. There's a matter of just showing up and just being there, but also I think there's a qualitative dimension to how we show up, and there's authentic individuals and people who are truly curious, and then there are those who are just kind of going through the motion, and you see it every day, I'm sure, in politics such. And so let's go a little deeper on that. Yeah, okay, you met a lot of people, but what else is it about this concept in your mind?
Everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And the concept to me, and I mean, you lived this in your early career, everybody's got a story, and it's more important in these touch points in listening to their story. Do less talk and more listening. And it took me a while to learn that. But through that, you have those touch points. Or these, just on the way out here today, a touch point I made 25 years ago called me up, said, hey, I need some help in doing what I do. And that would not have been there had I not taken the initiative to get out and make those touches.
So Patrick, all right, so you've met a lot of people on the way. We're pretty seasoned over the years. We've been around. These relationships just don't continue to happen unless we're doing something about them, in my opinion.
Sure.
How do you, it's about nurturing and continuing to stay top of mind. What are your thoughts? What have you done to continue to kind of nurture all of those relationships?
Stay in touch.
Yeah.
But don't just stay in touch when you're asking for something.
Yeah.
And again, to me, it's always more about listening. And it sounds contrite, but how's the family? Talk about what's going on with them. And then I think they take an interest in you and you develop a real friendship. As you know, the best consultant's one that's a valued friend more than even a consultant. So I think that's what you develop that relationship. It doesn't have to be calling people every week, but when you run into them 3 times, kind of like you and I do, we run into each other 2 or 3 times a year, but we're still good friends. And there's that mutual respect and friendship. And I think those kind of relationships are the ones that end up helping you in the long run in your business. I mean, and in politics, but particularly in business.
What is your, I talk to so many young professionals in professional services who say, I don't have time to do all of these touches, right?
Well, you're going to be sitting in a cubicle the rest of your life.
Well, something that I say to them.
Yes.
You just reinforced it. It's a must, right? You have to do it. You have to find the time.
In professional services, when you get to a level, if you're not selling, you're not going anywhere. Yeah. You're only going to get to a certain level, and you can't sell unless you have relationships. You don't have to be the most charming or engaging person, but you do have to have those relationships to look back on. Otherwise, you're just going to maybe you want to be in a cubicle, but to really succeed at the highest levels, which most people aspire to, I believe, you've got to have relationships.
Well, and you've got to take the time to keep them fresh.
Right.
I just think that's probably one of the biggest things that we try to emphasize, and you clearly do that.
Your whole business model is based on that, which I think is the genius of it, because you go into these consulting firms with people that really haven't thought that way. Yeah. I mean, it's a different world than when we started 35, 40 years ago, and you need to really succeed, have those relationships, and some people need to be taught. I had to be taught, but once you learn it, it's invaluable, and it's the comfort level in a consulting firm when you've got a book of business and things start going bad is a lot better if you've got that book than if you don't.
Boy, isn't it true?
Yeah.
And thankfully, I think we're starting to come out of a little bit of a dark period in professional services the last couple of years, PE and deal flows coming back, and that's really churning the engine around consulting and other professional services work. We're going to come back to a little bit more around relationship development and some of the work that I'm doing and Every Touch Matter. But let's go back. You and I played golf for years. I've known you, for, I don't know, 40 years?
40 years, I think, yeah.
Right?
We're both dyeing our hair gray now.
Yeah. You know my secret.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I have to be seasoned here, right? So, You mentioned your dad, State Farm, and really kind of emphasized that from the beginning. What other experiences in your life have you had that's really influenced you toward this idea of every touch point matters?
Probably outside the consulting world, it's just my involvement in politics. I started walking precincts when I was 10 years old with my dad down in Bloomington, and I learned from that the value. And I don't want to sound like I have relationships because I want to use these people for something to help me, but just those relationships with people that become actually good friends, and the benefit of that friendship, and again, mutual respect and trust, and people you like, that benefits your business tenfold.
Yeah.
But politics taught me that you've got to develop those relationships and nurture them.
Yeah.
Because in that business anyway, if you forget a name or aren't engaging or don't ask questions, people remember that. And I think that to me that's where I learned it. And then I applied it when I was in the consulting world, went back to a lot of those relationships, which were very beneficial to me professionally.
So I had the privilege of working with Phil Rock.
The best.
Years ago when I did a little stint with the Archdiocese of Chicago. And man, he was a throwback politician. He was a guy who could work both sides of the aisle.
Get things done.
And to me, he was not only a mentor, but someone I looked up to and really lived what we're talking about
here.
A
lot of people did. He was a true giant in Illinois.
Yeah. Were there other people in your history that sort of stand out as either mentors or models?
Probably my dad.
Yeah, yes, your dad.
Probably like your dad was, and I know what business he was in. And my dad had a very highly accomplished academically. I think he wanted to be a doctor and ended up selling insurance. But this guy was so loyal to his clients, his policyholders at his funeral. He was pushing 80 when he died. And I thought there'd be a handful of people there because you know how that goes. And all these people, there were hundreds of people there. And one guy I grabbed, I go, "What's your relationship with my dad?" Because I didn't know. He goes, "Well, he was my agent." So he was his State Farm. That kind of bond he had, and he was one of the most productive agents in the country at one time with State Farm. And that bond he had with his policyholders, and that's because he made those relationships cold calling in the day, you're dialing up off a sheet. But he kept them, and he was their agent, and he would do anything for their underwriters at State Farm that are still in therapy. From my dad going out there and go these. So he taught me the value of loyalty honesty, good service, and that kind of bond. And I just could not believe the number of people that showed up to his funeral saying, well, he was my State Farm agent. I'm like, I'm not sure if we get that anymore like that.
Thank you for sharing that story. It really reminds me of my father.
Yeah.
We're a small business, a funeral home business in Park Ridge, and he was a guy who knew everybody.
I went to a couple of funerals up there. It's like the mayor.
Third generation, but he just... You
gonna get me a deal on mine?
Well, that's my brother's doing now, so you'll have to discuss that with him. But honestly, I think because you were surrounded by, I was, it was all about relationships.
Yep.
My dad knew everybody's name, knew history about them. And I always remember, I thought about, okay, why do people come to Ryan Park Funeral Home versus the other 7 places within a 3-mile radius, right? And a lot of it has to do with, obviously, relationship, but trust. You mentioned it before. Just that confidence and professionalism, right? It's not a transaction.
It's not in the relationship's not a transaction.
Amen.
The relationship is a friendship. It's not a transaction.
Yeah.
The minute you do that, you start losing people.
Yeah, amen. Well, let's shift to politics because you've lived in that world. Is every touch point matters, from a qualitative standpoint, really getting done in that world very well anymore?
Well, sometimes the touch points are yelling at me. But yeah, and again, I tell my kids this all the time, and what you teach to your clients, it is the most important attribute I think you can have for success. Now, some people it may not work for, but if you really truly want to rise to the top, you have to have that ability.
Yeah. You've had a little bit of a taste of some of the work that I do, relationship expansion for professionals. I know you haven't officially gone through my program, but you were at Deloitte when I was delivering there, and I've been doing work with them, since 2004.
Great firm, great people.
Just amazing.
Amazing firm.
And from a cultural standpoint, I just think they're so aligned around what I teach, that it's not just about the technical skills, it is about relationships.
Sure.
It's not a transaction. But what are your impressions around what we do in the program? You've seen elements of it. Just perspective on that.
Well, the perspective I have, and I kind of touched on it before, if you don't think that way as a consultant, you're truly never going to succeed. Like walking around the halls at a client and shaking hands and becoming the easiest way to sell work is to sell to an existing client, right? Not telling you anything. But I think that skill set is just invaluable. And I think the genius of what you've done in the last, 30 years now is teach people that. Because I think people want to learn it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't want to take the time, let the business development people do that. I'll come in for the meeting. It doesn't work that way. You're never going to have that kind of relationship where you're not going to lose the client on a bad day, on something bad happens or they have to cut budget. If you're their trusted partner and you've nurtured that touch point over years, not just one dinner and a Cubs game, then you're going to keep that client. It's a lot easier to keep them than find a new one.
Well, you live it every day, and I thank you for that. I've had previous conversations, in fact, an interview just earlier today, where this individual is a partner, a senior individual in their firm, and there wasn't a whole lot of formal trainings for him. He's our vintage. It was more through observation that he picked up on this.
Yeah. Well, it didn't exist when we didn't have that kind of training when I was at Deloitte.
No, and that's my concern is, and this individual even mentioned, you've got that senior partner group that's starting to age out.
Yeah.
And
sooner
than later, and they're a little anxious about that next generation kind of carrying the water in terms of the business, the value of the business, especially in these partnerships and such. And yet, these senior partners haven't done a great job of bringing that next generation along.
Two things, and it actually somewhat relates what you do, and I agree that the next generation, and we've raised the next generation, and I collectively, I think 6 of us between us, that they don't quite get that. They don't get the touch point concept, I don't think yet, which again is invaluable. But the other thing, and this is what I do with clients too, is they're not great communicators.
Yeah.
It's too much here and getting up and giving a speech or doing something like this or doing TV or radio. I think that they need to also be trained on that, because whether you may not end up doing TV, but you're going to have to present yourself, even at your partner evaluation meeting. And those two skills, if you really want to succeed, you can be technically great. There are a lot of technically smart people, a lot.
That's what we say all the time.
But the differentiator is the guy that has that trusted relationship that they've developed via a touch point from 25 years ago.
So let's dig in on that piece and talk about what you're doing now, because I couldn't agree more. The consulting professional services world has become very commoditized. Sure. It's hard to differentiate solely on technical competence. And that's why I'm in business. That's why I believe the opportunity for separation is shifted from that back-end service delivery to that front-end client experience, the communications, the connection, the interaction, the curiosity. You have a startup now, BE Media.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What's going on?
Well, I kind of identified the need the same way you did years ago, that there is a communications gap. People that want to be executives don't truly know how to communicate, either in this kind of format or on a panel, giving a speech, doing a press conference, whatever. So we teach people, and we develop a master class. I teamed up with a former CBS 2 anchor in Chicago, and we developed a master class that teaches you everything. And there's a way to do it. And I've probably done 1,000 TV interviews. And Brad, my partner, was an anchor forever. He's won the Murrow Award and 40 Emmys. So we teach C-suite folks or aspiring C-suite folks how to communicate better. There's a way to do a panel, right? When I remember at Deloitte, I did a lot of panels.
Yeah.
And you can actually own the panel if you know how to do it. And where people remember, I remember David Ryan because his presentation was so much better. And there is an art to it, and there's a science to it.
Okay.
So that's what we teach people how to do. And it's fun. I love teaching it but I learned it, the hard way. I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But I think we've developed a great program. We've had a lot of success coaching people.
Yeah.
And same thing you've done. And I think they realize it's a valuable skill.
Tell me about the art and science piece, because I'm kind of into that as well. I mean, there's individuals who are sort of naturally good at this, right? That's sort of the art. But we're talking about most individuals who are maybe really technical, more comfortable with the science. And they like the science part about their technical competence and delivery. But when it comes to communications and connection, is there a science around it? Is there a methodology?
Yeah,
do you teach that?
Yeah, I do. I do teach that.
Talk to me about that, because we're all about process for this constituency. That's their safety net. Tell me about it.
There is a process in any of those venues that I talked about of how to communicate effectively, whether it's coming up with that message, whether it's how to deliver the message, how to respond to an interviewer, how to respond to a panelist, how to respond to an angry person. There is a science to doing it. It's not rocket science, but there are things that in dealing with the media, which is what we deal with a lot, from going in and shaking the producer's hand or the camera to make you, they can make you look bad. I mean, this is what, or they can make you look good. Yeah. So there is a science to it, but unless you've done it a lot or have been on the other side as a journalist, you don't get that. And these opportunities, you've done a million of these things, are a great opportunity to present yourself and your skills. So you can merge that technical stuff. Nobody's a natural. I don't agree. Nobody's a natural. And the key is preparation. And preparation is not just a one-day thing. Preparation is ongoing. Yeah. I do a lot of political talking head stuff, and I probably do 3 hours of reading news a day.
Sure.
So when I go on, I'm prepared more than the person sitting next to me. That's always my goal. I am the most prepared. And I think that's how you succeed. But you can teach people those things. I actually think the most effective communicators maybe aren't the smoothest people, but they're the most credible because they're
authentic.
Authentic, exactly. Yeah. And in politics, if you're not authentic, you don't do well. And I think the same as in any presentation. If you're, my late wife used to say, Pat, sometimes they don't remember what you said, but they remember if you're a nice guy.
And how you made them feel.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard that as well, but no question. Wise woman. a little more on the business. So who are you targeting? Is it public, private? How do we get a hold of you?
Well, we're targeting anybody that has an interest in it. So public, private, anybody that aspires it was youngerish and aspiring that next generation, or current executives. We're doing a lot of current executive training, but I think the real need is with the younger folks.
Yeah,
so,
the next gen.
Yeah, the next gen. So we have some public clients now. We've got a couple of political candidates, but yeah, I just like you did years ago. I think there's a need, and I think that even my own kids, I have 4. Some are real good 2 are real good communicators, 2 aren't, and I keep telling them you've got to do like the touch points first, and then have an ability to articulate your message. And it's not rocket science, but there is a way to do it.
So keep going on that. If you had some advice to or for that next gen, what are some of the blocking and tackling things they need to be doing earlier in their career, not waiting until you're a partner candidate, right? And now you're being considered. What do you got to be doing now?
There should not be a night during the week when you're of that age where you are not at some kind of event. And again, it's not transactional. Get involved in something that's meaningful. I think we did Chicago Cares. Remember that years ago?
Yeah, I do remember.
Met a lot of people there that I still keep in touch with. A lot of my contacts came through going to Mayor Daley events. You go and you should always be, and maybe not 4 nights a week because you still want to have fun, but you need to be out in we used to always say in the market, whether it's lunch or not transactional, not insincere, but continue to develop relationships with people that are going to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah. Pat, it sounds good. It sounds really old school, to be honest.
It's hard
with
work.
you. And it is hard work. And in this day and age, I'm not sure that next gen group has that mindset. Work-life balance comes into play, and I hear this a lot. And so I'm sharing what I hear, and that is,
I would have told my dad that. I'm not sure if he would have wanted to hear it.
I hear you, brother. But these are individuals who do work very hard every day. They're billing their hours, cranking out deliverables. They have a family, they have a life to live on the personal side. And so justifying the time and effort that it takes to go do what you just suggested is, I think, harder these days.
For sure.
How do you overcome that?
Well, there's no way of getting around it. If you want to be top, maybe you don't, that's fine. But if you really want to succeed, then you kind of have to make some of those sacrifices. Yeah. And listen, I used to commute to Europe for work, and I told my firm at the time, I go, I'm coming home on the weekends because I want to see my kids and I want to see my wife. But you have to make a commitment, particularly early on. And if you can convince them that this will pay off greater down the road, and it's a hard sell. I know it is a hard sell, but I just think that's the only way to do it. There's no way around. You can't build relationships on a text or on a Zoom. Yeah. It's got to be doing something that you can bond over.
Well, the individuals that I've worked with over the years, the folks who put in the work and see it pay off are the ones who are enlightened.
Right.
They saw the return on investment.
Sure.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, for you and me, it's 40 years of this stuff.
Yes, and here's the challenge. We live in a very kind of short view of life, short attention span. And I went to a few events and last week, and I didn't really see a whole lot of benefit, so I'm going to stop doing it, right? And so people kind of unhook on what they should be doing because they're not seeing the immediate return on investment. Whereas those who hang in there, keep sticking it out, and start to see traction, see that return on investment, those are the ones who are enlightened and are willing to continue to do it.
Yeah.
But there's so few
that
I have found.
Maybe the consulting world needs to start baking that into their goals. That maybe that's an exchange for, instead of being 90% billable, you're 70% billable, but you're doing 30%, doing just that. If it were my practice, that's what I'd be doing, because these guys, that partnership that you're sitting on depends on these guys producing. You may be onto something, although that's
How do I make up for those billable hours?
Well,
is what leadership
I
is
think,
probably thinking.
and I get that. I mean, I sat on those calls for years. I get that, but if they've got to be incentivized. I don't think though that this group is lazy. I think they're motivated.
Yeah.
And maybe they just need that guidance. And maybe you and me, collectively, everybody at this level needs to do a better job of giving examples of how that's worked. I could give, and I'm sure you could too, hundreds of examples of how it works, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do believe this constituency, this next generation, they're really smart, and they recognize.
Oh, they're way smarter.
They recognize they need to do this.
Yeah.
It's just there's some anxiety. There's a fear factor with it. There's that balance thing.
Well, it's like a fear of speaking.
Yeah.
Once you've mastered it, you've got a skill, and you're not afraid of it anymore.
And how do you do that? You need reps, right?
You need reps.
You
You need to be told how to do it, or taught how to do
Amen.
it, and then you rep it. Right?
Amen.
It's like golf.
Patrick, we could go on and on.
Yeah.
Where do we get a hold of you? Tell us.
bemedia.ai.
Okay.
That's our website, and Pat Brady, and look us up. But it's always a pleasure to see you, David. Had a lot of laughs over the years.
Thank you for coming to Aurora and this magnificent
This place
space.
this is the nicest. This is fantastic, and I've done a lot of this.
Yeah.
This is an unbelievable facility. It's probably one of the best I've been in.
No, the folks at Bureau Gravity are fabulous, and
They're onto something here, young man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good to see you.
Patrick,
Yeah, David,
all the best.
take care.
my
We'll see
friend.
you.
Yeah.